Hello and welcome to the Surround Sound podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host EJ Trivett and I'm the Chief Exec of OmniMusic. And OmniMusic is a disability music organisation, and we believe that everybody has the human right to express themselves creatively. And so we do that by using traditional, adaptive and assistive music technology to support people with profound disability to make the music that matters to them. So this is episode 1, and today's episode is about the transformational power of music. And I'm really pleased to have with me today Andy Ruddick, head teacher of Heaton School in Stockport. And so Andy, being the head teacher now, how was school life for you?
I had a great group of friends when I was at school. I was into music myself to the point where I went on to university and studied music. I had lots of friends who also were into music. So it was either music or football. So those two combined.
Would you say then that your interest in music started at school?
Absolutely, yeah. Early, so primary age. I started playing my first instrument when I was 5. So I started playing the piano when I was 5. Brilliant. And from that point on, I enjoyed it. And then I went on to play other instruments. And then I found lots of skills that I was able to use in jobs like I'm in now.
Heaton School is a really special place, and we have first-hand experience of that. And it's the kind of place that once you've either visited or you've met the students or the staff, it just leaves this lasting impression. Could you tell us a bit more about the school and how you came into your role there?
Okay, so my journey to Heaton School, if you like, I've worked in lots of different specialist provision, working with younger, older adults, but the commonality was they all had learning difficulties, and I discovered that from a very early age teaching music, that music was such a powerful tool. I also loved working with people. I love leading. I love managing. And so those two combined, here I am as a head teacher. But there was something about the school that attracted me to work there. And it was that special side of the students. It's the students that pull you to anywhere like Heaton School.
OmniMusic is a disability music organisation, and we're working in partnership exclusively with SEND schools and with adult day services. So working with Heatons is really important for us. I'm curious to understand, though, and you've touched on it slightly, but why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because the children or the students that are in our school, they deserve a really great education, and that's what steers me on. So at Heaton School, we have a 4-word ethos. In fact, the staff who work with me, I'm a bit like a politician. I always go back to these 4 words. But the first one is enjoy. Learning, what steers me on is making sure that learning is enjoyable. I want students to be challenged. That's the second word. So enjoy, challenge. And in doing those things, we celebrate difference, we celebrate diversity, we celebrate achievement, and that's the final word, achievement. So they all go hand in hand. So we start with enjoyment. So if a child doesn't come into any setting, any school, and they don't enjoy learning, then we might as well go home. Learning has to be enjoyable. The challenge side is really important because we can learn a lot from each other. They can learn off each other. We can learn off them. They can learn off us. And then the celebrate and achieve comes from that. And that's what I do.
Brilliant. And I think hearing you talk about that, there is no surprise that we're working together in it, because our core values as an organisation are
aligned,
joy, absolutely,
yeah.
Joy and ambition and listening and learning and ultimately using the adapted instruments that we use and the assistive music technology to create that equitable space. So we're really supporting inclusion and diversity. So it's nice to just revisit those values, isn't it? So tell us a bit about your school's journey with OmniMusic. What was it that initially drew you to incorporate music education in the curriculum and to start this partnership?
When I first started, I think it was very soon after starting, I think there'd been a historic link with music technology and OmniMusic. There was a link to a practitioner who'd worked there before. And obviously with my interest in music, I felt as though I could lead and guide a vision, but also music's very much still at my heart of what I think's powerful and needs to be within the curriculum. And so the conversations we initially had was around use of technology. So to have practitioners who are on that understanding of how powerful that could be, that sort of really gave me a motivation to sort of explore how we could work together.
Brilliant. And so just to build on that, what did music look like in the school before we started working together?
Yeah, I think historically, performing arts has always been an essential part of Heaton School curriculum. We'd recently appointed a drama specialist, but also with a bit of a musical background. But we didn't have a music specialist other than myself. Yeah. And obviously in a leadership role, you can't really influence it, but what you can influence is getting the right people in to lead and work with me and others on looking at how music can be built. And so there was that sort of background of music being within the curriculum. I guess the challenge for us was that they're really hard to find, music specialists. And I've realised that probably my opportunities have come about in the past in my career because I'm a SEND specialist, but also a musician and a teacher. So those three, sort of, if you want to do that type of work, are quite rare. And I've only realised that in the past few years, really. Yeah.
Because it's more than a skill set, isn't it? It's an attitude to really want to be working in that space. This is not just a way to kind of pay your rent as a musician. You have to really have the heart to want to be doing that kind of work, which is interesting because we're looking at how do we develop more specialists as our work grows who really have their heart in that part of the music spectrum, I suppose. So we started with 2 sessions a week. It was about 2 years ago now, wasn't it? And as our work together has grown, we've expanded to sort of 2 full days of residency within the school. So what was it that had you embed music so fundamentally into your curriculum?
So recently realigned our curriculum around what's called a pathway model. So basically our students are in a pathway that meets their need. So the classes are based around need rather than age or key stage. We've got a pre-formal sensory therapy-based provision. We've got an informal curriculum, a semi-formal and a formal. And because we've got learners that sort of age equivalent vary from 3 months and then all the way up until key stage 2, so age 9, 10 equivalent, even though they're teenagers. That's the level they operate at. So going back to your question, we didn't want students to miss out, basically. The reason we increased was so that the coverage across the curriculum and across the students was greater, so that every child could benefit from music, because music's such a motivator for them and needs to be incorporated. Brilliant. So that's what drove us to want more, really.
Brilliant.
Because we could start to see the impact of what it was having.
Fantastic. Thank you. So you've talked a little bit about this, but it'd be great to explore a bit more how the music sessions really align with your school's core values and your overall education philosophy.
Yeah. So I'll go back on the school's 4-word ethos, really. So it ticks all of those boxes. So music provides that enjoyment factor that captures students, engages students, provides an opening for learning to take place. And the challenge within that, so many of our students their learning is around their communication, it's around their independence, it's around their engagement with others. We've got a lot of non-verbal students. So music's such a powerful way of being able to enable all those things to happen. So you take it for granted, but playing music together, you're turn-taking, you're listening to each other. We've seen progress through those sessions because they're being able to communicate more. So teachers were coming back sort of saying, I've seen a student do this. I've not seen them do that before, but they're doing it in a music lesson. So that very much aligns with what we're about, that enjoyment, that challenge. And then going back to the other two words, that celebration, that achievement. So music's great because, as again, with the music technology that's used, recordings are made, they can really sort of capture the work that's going on. They can listen to their recordings, and they celebrate that.
And I'm curious, you talk about sort of music enabling people to kind of access communication in different ways. Would you say there are other parts?
And many of our students, they progress, but for some of our students, it's about maintaining those skills. So if they start to do it in a music lesson, they might then start to do it in some intervention with another therapy, like a speech and language session, or they might. Our students love hydrotherapy. We have a hydro pool. Again, it's very similar, but they're skills that we then start to see within other contexts. The more exposure students have to different contexts to be challenged and also achieve their targets that they're working towards.
So could you give us a bit more information about some of the changes that you've observed in your students since incorporating music in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions is, what's the impact of the curriculum that's been delivered? A number of curriculum leads have come back with Omni sessions of showing some of those. So I can cite a few. So we had one young man who, non-verbal, quite a lot of medical issues, quite a lot of challenges just in life in terms of his health. But this young man, as the weeks went on, was getting more and more confident in his music lesson. The practitioners working with him were using a joystick, which was attached to a violin sound, and his movement in his hand is quite limited, but the way they managed to set that up so that it was picking up the minute of movement. But after weeks and weeks of doing this, he really started to show that actually was starting to pick out a tune, and that skill was the first time it was his inner musician coming out as a result of each week he'd been sort of building his confidence. No, and that for some of our students is what it's all about. I've heard some unseen engagement as well has massively increased with some of our students. The confidence building and the willingness to engage within them. It might be just with an adult or it might be within a small group. Can think of lots of examples where students have started to really do that.
Brilliant. And it's so lovely to hear kind of the use of the technology and that being a really powerful tool in the mix, particularly for some of the students.
Yeah.
I think that's the digit composer that you're talking about that looks like the wheelchair joystick, doesn't it? And it really is an easy way in for somebody who's perhaps their physical body or their cognition couldn't support a traditional instrument. So at OmniMusic, as you know, we use a combination of traditional, adapted and what we call AMT, which is assistive music technology. So assistive music technology is a form of technology that enables people with profound disability to access music. And sometimes it's mainstream tools, sometimes it's something that we hack together, and sometimes it connects to what's called AAC, which is something that people see around. So take Professor Stephen Hawking, for example, with his voice activated controller, he would use his eyes and that would be detected by a computer and that would produce his voice, whereas AMT might use somebody's small body movements and then that's converted into musical sounds. And so that's something that we use a lot in our partnership settings and also in your school. We've talked a little bit about the Digit Composer joystick. Do you have a favourite tool that you've seen in action?
Yeah, so the joystick's one of them, but the Soundbeam is essentially just what you've just said. So it looks a bit like a microphone on a stand, but it can be set to a range from a couple of centimetres all the way to a couple of metres. And the range that's set, linked to a MIDI controller, can then be activated to play a scale, or it can activate certain sound effects or whatever, depending on what you're doing. It's such a great invention, really, to make music accessible for certainly students that we have at Heaton School. I've seen a big shift as well in use of everyday equipment. I know, having talked to some of your practitioners, use of Xbox controllers, use of PlayStations, things like that, to actually sort of use every day. So often people get put off by cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's an interesting topic because our resident creative technologists are always working out how can we make that not just physically accessible for people with disabilities, but financially sustainable for families. Because for me, I have the privilege that I can continue my music outside of my music lesson, for example. But if your physical body relies on you using AMT, and these are tools that maybe cost £5,000-10,000 for one item, then your music experience stops when our team goes home. Whereas our creative technologists are looking at how could we hack a Kindle? How could we hack really very, very affordable pieces of technology?
I think that's been it's been a really great part of our partnership together, because quite often the projects that happen, you've got all this expertise come in, and then when they go, you're left with nothing. Both resource and training. So I know a key part to the partnership with Omni for us has been about getting staff more and more on board and looking at how they're trained around music and the use of music, to the point where recently we've had and a part of our review together has been about, our vision is very much about music not only being a curriculum area but being embedded throughout the curriculum. So how can it be embedded within our English programme? So how can it be embedded in maths? How can it be explored within, dare I say, it's food tech and science-based learning? Because we know that it's a massive motivator.
So we now have a musical moment, and this is a piece of music created by our students using AMT. So enjoy. How does that one make you feel?
You know what? It's just really good to hear, because it makes you feel that the fact that the students have been given that opportunity to have accessible music so they can actually be creative, to experience playing music and being involved in music, but being able to record it and listen to it and share it.
Yeah.
It gives you that buzz, doesn't it?
It does.
The fact they're able to not only play it, they're able to, with technology now, it's very easy to record with iPads, with laptops, whatever you're using, just with a microphone. And the satisfaction for our students to actually share that. We've played tracks in our assemblies, we've put audio tracks on our school blog, so parents and our Heaton community are able to experience and hear it as well. So it's great.
In fact, I think that might have been one of the ones that we had played on BBC Radio Manchester.
I think it was. Yeah.
And that track
Famous.
went along with another track that had a really different energy. So how did that track make you feel?
We work a lot with students about feelings and emotion. And again, because they've been given that opportunity to that inclusive approach, we sometimes assume they always want the get up and go, the lively music. But actually, our students have quite a eclectic mix of idea of what makes good music. So that just reflects to me how it brings out the students' side that perhaps we wouldn't see otherwise.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. And we talk a lot about the technology allowing participants to make the music that matters to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're not prescribing what that looks like. Could you share some specific examples of how the music impacts individual students? Yeah,
so I can think of one student in particular recently. So one student who is in what we call our informal pathway. Now, our informal learners need very individualised learning. They're never going to sit down in a classroom and attend to a traditional lesson. That's why they're with us. They need an active curriculum. They need to be outside doing things that are engaging with inside. And there was this one young man I can think of who's been accessing music now since September. But only the other week, a teacher told me that they'd actually engaged in a full 45 minutes. That is pretty significant. Bearing in mind, usually it's 2 minutes here, bit of a break, 2 minutes there, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. But that to me shows that just how powerful it is, because it's engaging.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you. And so as we look back now at the partnership with OmniMusic, what would you say has been your biggest highlight?
Going to the Bridgewater Hall and seeing the students, not only sort of as a school, but it was quite a big thing because it was quite a good venue, but they were able to sort of perform, they were able to share, but other people who were experiencing similar projects were also able to hear as well. So within the Manchester community, our little school in Stockport was able to be a part of a wider project. So that was one of the highlights. But I think for me, it's just as well seeing vision starting to realise itself, that actually we've worked in partnership, not really knowing where it's leading, but I can see that it's really working, but B, we're starting to see the next steps moving forward in terms of working with our teachers, developing training for our staff that are working with the students, and how music can be embedded into the curriculum like I spoke about before.
Brilliant. So what would your advice be then to, let's say, another school or a trust that's on the fence about whether to dive in with music?
My advice would be know your students, and if your students respond well to music, it's proven in research that music is such a great tool for learning with anyone, but especially SEND students. So explore it further and be willing to sort of dare to do something a bit different, because it's starting to really pay off for us.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No
it's
problem.
Wonderful to have this chat, and it's just fab to be working with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, EJ.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Surround Sound Podcast. And to hear more about our work, you can follow us at omnimusic.uk.